Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are connecting from today. Thank you so much for joining our second guest experience benchmark webinar of the year, this time focusing the insights for the Australia and New Zealand, as well as the Asia regions. I'm Jessica Kurtz, the Global Product Ambassador here at Reviewpro Reputation, part of Shiji Group. And with me today is my colleague, Bruno Saragat, our sales engineer, and most importantly, the mastermind and brains behind our guest experience benchmark report. Hi, Bruno.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome. And as well, we have two special guest speakers with us today. We have Brad Samet with Quest Apartments, as well as Peter Clay with Caravan Industry Association of Australia. Hi, Brad and Peter.
Good morning.
Hi, Jess.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. So we wanted to make sure that we invite guest speakers today, not only to be able to share the key highlights of our guest experience benchmark report, but we also thought it would be a good idea for the first time to bring on the ground perspective of two Shiji Reviewpro Reputation customers and how they use our guest experience benchmark report year over year and quarter over quarter. So thank you so much again for joining us today. Brad, Peter, Brad, would you like to start and give a short introduction?
Firstly, thank you, Jessica and Bruno, for the opportunity to speak and be on this presentation. I work directly with the Quest Group based here in Melbourne, Australia, which is part of the wider Ascot's group of companies. My focus really with Quest is to work with a portfolio of properties here, predominantly in Victoria, but also on a guest experience across all 118 properties that we have. So really continual focus on guest experience improvement throughout the year.
Thank you so much, Brad. And you, Peter?
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, everyone. My role really involves General Manager for Research at the Caravan Industry Association of Australia, which is a not-for-profit association that represents the caravan industry, so both parks and manufacturing. And my role really is about empowering and enabling our industry through the use of data to make better insights, to benchmark, to support our government advocacy positions and so forth. So I take it as more of a lens from an industry association than a commercial perspective, and really aimed at trying to help improve our industry and stay innovative.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those introductions. And again, for joining. I think what's really interesting is the different roles you have, the different types of organizations you have within the hospitality industry, and how Reviewpro Reputation and the guest experience benchmark specifically is so valuable to you. And we'll get back to that later in the session today. I think it's very interesting for everyone attending today, whether you are Reviewpro clients or not, how this guest experience benchmark report can really help you leverage your guest experience and how it can help support, enhance your online reputation as well. So just a reminder for anyone that is their first webinar with us, this is a quarterly and yearly report that Bruno releases. Bruno, what edition is this?
Number 16.
So, 16. Yeah. So that, I think you said it started in 2022. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yes. Q1 2022. Okay. Yes.
So in Q1 2022, and I remember back then, I think the need came from coming out of a pandemic, out of the COVID times, and the industry, the hospitality industry, really wanting to know, how am I performing compared to my region? How are my properties comparing when it comes to whether the Americas, Australia, New Zealand, Asia, Middle East? Am I in line with online reputation? Am I in line with what others are doing? So this obviously stuck, it stayed. The feedback we're getting is positive, but also requests to continue building on that report. I'm sure Peter and Brad, you've had your share of feedback, and hopefully you've seen some of the things you've requested in newer versions. So just to anyone new here today, to give you context, it did come from a time where hospitality leaders were really searching and looking for benchmarking themselves, their brands against global and regional insights to be able to know where they stood and where operational improvements could be made. So this is now the 16th edition. we are reviewing today the yearly one, which for me is always the most exciting to go through. If you have downloaded the report, it is 107 pages, and that's why we do these webinars, is to really grasp the key insights for each region. Today, looking a bit at global versus Asia and Australia, New Zealand, to be able to make sure that everyone here, whether you're a Reviewpro client or not, can go back to your metrics, to your online reputation and say, is that in line, or what can I do to improve my performance in order to stay above the region I'm in or to meet global statistics? So I just wanted to give a bit of that context before we dive into it. I wanted to let everyone here know that your microphones are on mute, but we would really like to listen from you, your questions, either for Brad and Peter after when we bring them back on later, or for Bruno and myself, or for
Absolutely.
We'll have a little Q&A at the end. Okay. And then the last thing that I always like to mention for these sessions is, of course, please download the report if you haven't. If you find it interesting afterwards, we'll drop it in the chat. And second, my big takeaway for everyone today is go please and look at how this compares to your data as an individual property, as an association like with Peter's team, or as a brand of hotels or a larger organization such as Quest for Brad. So I think they'll talk to us more about that later. I have one more question for each of them before they join us again at the end of the session. But I just wanted to give that little introduction for everyone. Please make sure the chat is used for your questions, and we'll get back to those. So Peter, Brad, as mentioned, I'll ask one more question to each of you, just so the audience is more familiar. And then in about 30 minutes, when Bruno and I go through the key findings, we'll bring you back for around 10-minute fireside chat. Okay, so Peter, I know that at Caravan Industry, you have a similar or also a report inspired also with our guest experience benchmark report. Could you tell us a bit about where that came about and how it's used on your side?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, that COVID time, we were just so desperate for information. And the report that Bruno put out, I remember it coming across my desk and going, this is an incredible report, not just in the review space, but in tourism in general, in accommodation, and going, this is an amazing set of data. And the next step that I sort of looked at it going, well, how do we as a caravan industry compare to this? Because we fit in a bit of a different space to perhaps the broader accommodation landscape. And to be honest with you, the first thing I did is copy it. Respectfully, I went through and said, well, how can we create those benchmarks? How do we look at it and go, how do we compare? How do we fit into the landscape? So we created a loose version of this in terms of trying to look at some of the key metrics broken down across 1,000 caravan parks in Australia. So that's the majority of sort of commercial size parks. And then we broke it down into obviously all those great metrics that you have, but also down by state and territory. So we can start to get an understanding of where we fit into this bigger accommodation piece. So that's an annual piece that we follow up about halfway through the year following your release. And we try and tie it into some of those key messages about how we're sort of performing against Oceania and Asia as a whole.
That's amazing. And Bruno, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm guessing it's a huge kudos to you that this is inspired and not
really happy.
Thank you so much, Peter. And for anyone here online as well today, if you find the guest experience benchmark report valuable, whether a part of it, all of it, and you also want to share it as part of another report you're already creating, as part of maybe some GM conference or some wider organization events, obviously, please make sure this is a public report. You can use the data. You can, reach out to us if anything could be interesting for you as well. So please keep that in mind as well. And Brad, I know that Quest Apartments is part of Ascot, and how does it differ from the rest of the portfolio, and why is the report, let's say, valuable to you at Quest Apartments specifically?
Yeah, definitely. So the Quest brand within Ascot is unique because we're the franchise arm of Ascot. So all of our properties within Australia are all franchised out. So every business owner with us has skin in the game. They own that franchise. So the guest experience reporting that we put in front of them is really critical to help them drive their business. And similar to Peter, I'll put my hand up, and we use Bruno's report inside out, upside down, every single component of it. It's really valuable to us to be able to overlay our results on top of what's happening in Oceania and Asia Pacific and even global. It allows us to really set the scene for the year ahead. Similar to Peter, we do an annual report, which I'm about to produce, and it helps us to set our goals for the year ahead, but then also allow us to benchmark every quarter where we actually sit and are we heading in the correct trajectory for the brand and even down to individual states and properties. So really crucial to us.
That's so great to hear. I'd love to see a copy of that if that's shareable, Brad, of your report.
Definitely.
I looked at Peter's the other day. Thank you so much to both of you. So I think what we'll do, those were the quick questions. Now, I hope that people in the audience have questions for the two of you as well at the end. If not, Bruno and I do have some for later that I think could be very valuable, going deeper into how you use the insights. Are there actions you've taken based on the report? Because as I was mentioning earlier, I think the key thing is not just, oh, this is what happens in my region, or this is how, it's really how do we compare, as you said, also globally, not just regionally, and we'll dive into that deeper. So we're going to take you off stage, what they call it here on this platform, and we'll bring you back in about 30 minutes. Thank you, Brad and Peter.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then going through today's agenda, just to quickly let everyone know, we're going to go through some online reputation metrics. We're going to then cover semantics, management response, and we are going to end with surveys. Okay, so that will be a bit of the agenda today. These are different parts of the report. If you are familiar with the report, you know that we're going kind of in the order of it. If not, once again, we will share it in the chat and you can download the report after. But we will start a bit with, what are your potential guests and guests seeing online? And then the semantics, which is personally my favorite part of Reviewpro and the benchmark report. It's the importance of the sentiment and the text behind what your guests are writing. Then management response, we'll talk about the importance of that as well. And finally, our online, our guest surveys for in-stay and post-stay. Perfect. So before I hand it over to Bruno, just a quick reminder. I think most of our clients are very familiar with this term, but for anyone joining that might not be a Reviewpro customer today, the Global Review Index, or GRI, is a term you will hear us talk about often. It is also very much in the report. And that is Reviewpro's proprietary score to be able to measure hotels and brands' online reputation at any time. Okay, so it is taken from the scores that your properties receive on all the different review sources, but we then apply an algorithm to it to really give you a realistic view of what your potential guests are seeing whenever they visit your properties on one of the online sources. Okay, so for example, the algorithm does take into consideration the recency of your reviews. So I won't give away the whole algorithm, but I just wanted to talk about the importance that we really put into the score, because we know that what somebody wrote about your property 8 months ago doesn't have the same weight and importance than what a guest wrote yesterday. I think we all agree as travelers as well, that if we're going to a property, I'm probably looking at the first page of Google or booking.com or Expedia, and not really going to the 6th or 7th page to know what your previous guests were saying. So just wanted to explain a bit of the GRI. And Bruno, this is now global. We'll then go into Asia and Oceania.
Yes.
What did we see in 2025 for the global review index?
Absolutely. As you said, given the sensitivity of the tool, we are able to capture the nuances of the seasonality that are involved in every year. And the trend is positive. We can see that clearly, although there are differences, there are divergences among the different star categories, as we can see, because while the 3-star are growing at a very fast pace, so the result is very positive, we have a kind of positive but less positive results compared to 3-star for the 5-star and 4-star. This is because we are seeing some effect of seasonality that is kind of slowing down the growth, especially for the 5-star. Why is that? Well, because also the growth is incremental, meaning that when you reach such a high kind of ceiling, 90%, is kind of a bit harder to go even higher. So it is kind of slowing down in a natural way. Let's say the other very positive trend, considering also the new record in tourist arrival the United Nations recently declared that 2025 was, we see a growth in the review volume. This shouldn't be taken for granted, because in the past years we saw a divergence also here. So we saw the GRI growing, but we saw the review volume going down. When the two things are happening, it means that at kind of operatives level, there must be a very good efficiency, because review volume is a proxy of the occupancy rate. So the more the occupancy rate goes up, the more difficult for the operatives to be able to cope with all the requests coming from clients. So seeing those two trends going in the same direction, it means like that the hotel industry, is effectively being able to provide a very good service all in all, and improving in these offerings.
Yeah, I think those insights are fantastic, Bruno. And one of the key things that stand out for me is the fact that, like you said, with record tourist arrivals in 2025, the industry globally still was able to continue increasing the global review index.
Exactly.
Maybe not at the same levels as previous year, but every category, 3, 4, and 5-star, still increased their global review index despite a 3.2% review volume increase in the last 3 years. So just a huge kudos to everyone here, because it really is a testament to hoteliers around the world caring about the guest experience, putting the effort in to understand the guest feedback and to make those operational improvements and guest experience improvements accordingly. So let's dive into the two regions that we're talking about today and how it differs. So for anyone in the audience from the Asia region, Bruno, what are the main differentiators with what we just saw for global?
The Asia market, has been the best performing market over the past 3 years. And this is because you can see these 5-star level, at luxury segment level, they have been able to achieve a very high consistency, almost as high as the Middle Eastern market that we saw in the first webinar. This means that if you look at the blue shading, like the review volume, which is a proxy, as we said, of the occupancy rate, the market is less affected by this change in occupancy rate than other markets. So they are able to achieve consistency, not just throughout the year, but throughout the last 3 years, which is a very relevant things to say for this market. At the same time, we can see that the GRI for the luxury segment is 92.2. So it is an excellent performance. We're talking about like an average of all the hotels that we have in the sample. So it is an impressive performance. We, for the rest, see the same trend, with an important caveat here, that over the course of the past 3 years, we have been able to witness a kind of a change in the gap between 4-star and 3-star. So you see that the gap is kind of becoming smaller and smaller. So that means that the 3-star are growing at a very fast pace, and they are improving their performance year over year, which is a confirmation of what we have just seen at the global level, irrespective of the differences in the kind of review volume that come at different stages of the year.
That's really interesting. So anyone here from the Asia region, really congratulations. Please make sure you go back and look at your properties. Are you in these ranges for 3, 4, and 5-star? If you're above, that's even, a bigger testament to you and your team's work. And if you're below, then of course, there's always ways to understand the guest feedback and know which operational improvements, which training, which resources you might need based on what data Reviewpro can give you to understand how you can stay in line or outperform these averages. And I really like what you said, Bruno. I do see the 3-star trend here going up. I think it's very interesting to keep an eye on the 3-star segment all across the report that you just published. It was really interesting to see how they're the fastest growing segment. And I think that really comes to show that not always the biggest budget is what really matters for guest satisfaction, right? Sometimes you can improve guest stays and guest satisfaction through other ways,
Absolutely.
understanding your guest feedback. And so then for the Australia, New Zealand, Oceania region, what do we see for difference?
At the beginning, when we started releasing the report, when we released the first edition, we used the APAC region. But when they decided then to divide this into two different regions, because you can see the trends are completely different.
Okay.
The Oceania is in a way a more complex region. There are smaller countries, different standards. So it's also more complex to be able to capture these trends. But the first thing that we want to highlight is the fact that compared to the Asia market, the Oceania market is more affected by seasonality. So there are ups and downs, especially you can see in the 5-star segment. Okay, during peak season, which in the Oceania market is around end of the year, beginning of the following year, we see a huge effect of the pressure that the guests are putting the operatives under, and the negative effect of it is detracting from the growth that they are able to create in terms of GRI before the peak season. Especially the 5-star are hit by this kind of effect of seasonality, because you can see the 4-star are more linear in the performance. So there is a huge difference between what we see in the Asia market and in the Oceania market. This is also why, again, here we have the 3-star that are able to grow at a much faster pace than the 4-star and the 3-star and the 5-star, sorry. So this is also accompanied by a growth in the review volume. So this additional pressure, and this is partly explaining why the growth is different from the Asia market.
I think that's really interesting, and a great thing you pointed out about the seasonality. For everyone here in the audience today or listening to the recording after, if you're in the Australia, New Zealand, Oceania region, making sure that you analyze your guest feedback after peak season is going to be key, if you're not already doing it, to be able to anticipate what your guest feedback is and what they will be expecting the next busy season. So make sure, and we'll go into it later as well, and I think I will talk to Brad more about this when we bring them back, is what are you doing on the ground? What are operations doing, especially after peak seasons, to make sure you understand the next time that peak season comes up in your region, we know that guests are expecting this, this, and this. Or we know that we cannot meet all expectations because we're 100% sold out. However, the rest of the year, we need to make sure, to leverage that online reputation. It really depends, property by property, brand by brand. But being able to have this insight and comparing it to your properties will really give you that understanding of which parts of the year do I really need to focus my guest feedback on, and understanding what my guests are saying, so that we don't have these big drops every time our peak season comes, right? Because as Bruno is saying, here it marks the rise in review volume during peak season. And we're only going up in your region, by the way. I wanted to point out 4% growth since 2023 in review volume. So your guests are still leaving lots of reviews in your region. How do we make sure we leverage that feedback during those lower global review index moments where guests might be expecting a bit more? Okay, so we'll go into that a bit later as well. Thank you so much, Bruno. So talking about department scores, I know we're going to also look at global versus Asia and Oceania regions. Just to give an understanding to everyone, as you might know, when you go leave reviews at different sources, some of them only ask you for one overall score and your review text. And other sources do ask for more specific departmental scores, such as Booking.com, for example, is one of those that does. So we also take those because it's important for us to give you the information of, okay, this is your overall score, but which departments are pulling it down or bringing it up? Because you could have an excellent GRI, but then all of a sudden cleanliness is starting to go down, and you need to keep an eye on that, because eventually it will pull down your global review index. So this is a bit what departmental scores are. And just a quick summary, Bruno, what do we see for departmental scores?
Well, at the global level, we see that we are in line with what we have just said for the GRI. The vast majority of the major department score that we are reporting are positive, including value, which is a very sensitive score. With the partial exception of cleanliness, cleanliness is slowing down, but we also need to consider that cleanliness as the highest score. So probably this is due to kind of reaching a sort of ceiling, and the performance can only improve up to so much. We will see that for Asia, this is partly true because Asia is still improving and achieving an absolutely outstanding performance. But yes, I mean the overall picture that we can paint is that the service, room, value, and food and beverage are all in all positive. Though there are differences in the region, we're gonna see in a second.
Yeah. So then I'm looking at Asia. It does look, I mean, the trend is very positive, but cleanliness
is
is
very
going up for Asia, right?
Exactly. So trend is going, the cleanliness is going up for Asia. We are about to reach 95% for the 5 stars, an impressive performance, really impressive, considering when we started in 2022. And also value, you can see also value is raising for 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star. So the performance for the Asia market keeps being absolutely positive. And this is the same trend that we see kind of is reflecting all the 3-star or the star categories are pretty much performing with the same trend at the same level in this case.
Great job, Asia. And Oceania?
Oceania is kind of a bit different because, as we said, the luxury segment is almost grinding to a halt. We can see some indications of that by looking at the trends around cleanliness, room, and value, and especially food and beverage. So the trend is not positive. It is dropping compared to 2024, which was a very positive year for the Oceania market, and it is stable for service. On the contrary, you can see clearly that the 3-star segment is confirming what we saw at the GRI level. So it is growing, and it is growing fast. We can say that there is a certain, how can I say, percentage of recovery still from the COVID situation, but at the same time, the performance is positive, and it is totally different from what we see for the 3-star and partially for the 4-star. So the Oceania market is in a way less linear, more complex, more varied in terms of performance, where we break that down into the department scores.
And like you said earlier also, right, they really depend so much on the seasonality more than other regions, or at
Absolutely,
least
yes.
their indexes show that.
Yeah, exactly.
Something I really noticed and I wanted to point out for everyone here as well, value. I always think it's interesting that 3-star segment is really taking the lead in value. And I think that makes sense because value is always very tricky, as Bruno said, as it's the perception of the guests. Is what I'm receiving worth what I am paying for, right? Am I staying at your property for 100, 200 a night, whatever the rate is, 1,000, depending on your segment? Obviously, the expectations go up with that. So the perception of value, this is always a very interesting departmental score to me. And if you see that your value is increasing over the last 2 years, this is a huge testament to what you're offering compared to what you are charging, right? This means you probably have a competitive advantage when it comes to your comp set. If your value is trending up, because it means that over the past years, your team and your offerings are really up there with what the guests are paying, and they feel that it is worth their investment, what they're paying for the nightly rates compared to what they're receiving. So make sure everyone you look at your value departmental scores. I think F&B is a very interesting one to keep an eye on as well. I read more and more industry reports about food and beverage really being such a key part of people's travels now. And I know that a lot of our clients, especially in these regions, have restaurants in their properties as well. So I think it's really important to look at those F&B scores and see where you're going and what can you learn from the feedback in Reviewpro to see how you can improve, whether it's your breakfast, the minibar options, the buffets, and so on. So I really, really like the departmental score piece because it gives a bigger insight of where to focus on semantics. So it's kind of like I like to look at it as a funnel, right? Your global review index is key. What is my score? What are potential guests seeing when they visit me online? That's great. Then what makes that score, right? What are the reasons guests choose that score? Well, let's look at the departmental ones and know where we are, outperforming or underperforming. And then after that, okay, great. That gives me now what I need to be able to dig deeper into the semantics. So that's kind of the funnel I recommend everyone to look at it as well. So looking at these pies for the two different regions, we won't do global, I think just Asia and Oceania. This is always an interesting part of the report as well. And this shows you for your regions, and then you can compare with your brands and your properties in this region, where are the reviews coming from? And this is key because you want to understand where you need to focus your management response on. Where do you want to reply to your guests quicker than other sources if time and resources are, something that you need to consider? And especially when it is sources such as booking.com and others that are also booking channels, right? Because you want to make sure what's the percentage of my reviews coming from a source where potential guests can also make a decision to book, because that's where I want to make sure my reviews are the most positive. That's where I want to make sure there's a strong management response. So Bruno, compared to globally, or what highlights do you have for Asia when it comes to the share of sources?
Well, the Asia market is the most varied among all the regions that we have in the report. You can clearly see that by looking at the relevance that still the other minor sources have, 10%, which is very big compared to other regions and also compared to Oceania. This is one of the reasons why we decided to split that into two. We have huge relevance still coming from Agoda, and then we have, of course, Ctrip and Trip.com. Instead, we have that Expedia plays a smaller role in this region compared to the three biggest like sources, traditionally Google, Booking.com, and TripAdvisor, which all in all, they account for around 50% of the Asia market. This is healthy to see such a variety in the review sources, because that means that there are different ways of putting their opinion online for the Asia guest.
What's also interesting, I think we're more when we see this kind of like equivalent pie chart, is the potential guests also might be looking at many different sources, right? So then there's a little bit of feedback, like you said, in each of them. So just interesting to point out for anyone in the Asia region to keep an eye on Google. They did grow 3% in the region. So if you were focused more on booking, that's your strategy. That's great. But Google is right up there as well. They're taking up, like Bruno said, almost half of your review volume. So make sure you compare with your brand, your properties. If you're looking at around the same, then you know that Google and booking is where you really want to focus. And I mean, talking of booking and Google, this Oceania region looks much more like our global trends, right? If we compare global, this looks just like it. So what can you tell us for this region?
Definitely, this region looks like the European region, with the dominance coming from Booking.com, and kind of more relevance for Expedia and Google. Again, Agoda plays a role in the Asia Pacific market, and we can see that clearly here. But the striking difference is the smaller relevance for the minor sources, so that they're just 1% compared to 10% from the Asia Pacific market. In this way, we can say this is one of the reasons why we can say the two markets are completely different in that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, yeah, anyone here from this region, and actually for both regions, and anyone attending, just a reminder, if you are a Reviewpro customer, please make sure you have the Google and Booking.com integrations already in your accounts. This is a completely free integration. It's included with your Reviewpro reputation module. And what this gives you is the ability to reply to Google and Booking reviews directly from within Reviewpro without having to go out, sharing your password for the extranet with all the users of the properties, and having to leave Reviewpro, right? So especially if you're in these regions where you see that there's such a big part of your review share, make sure, I mean, really, we hope there's not a single client of ours that does not have the Google and Booking integration done. It's two-step process, and it really removes that pain point of having to go to other extranets to respond. So you can do so quicker, more efficiently, and in the same platform where you're already analyzing your guest feedback. Okay, so just a reminder, we do have the Google and Booking integration. And I have to say, in case Holiday Check is interesting to anyone here today as well, for your regions, we did just finalize our integration with them. So if you don't have it yet, make sure you also connect with Holiday Check so that you can reply directly to those sources as well. Okay, so I just needed to add that because it will improve your management response, and we're going to look at in a moment why that is so key. Okay, so let's make sure everyone has that integration. I can also drop it in the chat later if you need the steps on how to do that. Okay, perfect. So let's look here then. There we go. Okay, so speaking of response time, just a quick introduction to this. Average response time, as really it says so simply, is how many days is it taking your teams to reply to those online reviews? Okay, and we're not talking surveys here. We'll go into that in a moment. It's really the online reviews to understand what are potential guests seeing. Because I just read a study the other day that said over 60% of guests would more willingly book a hotel where the hotel responds to online reviews than one where it doesn't. Okay, so it is increasingly important to respond to online reviews, not just to as many as possible. Obviously, in an ideal world, you're responding to as many as possible in the shortest amount, but really keeping in mind how long it is taking your team. Because if it takes 2 weeks, or over a week in this day and age, no one is going to read that response. And you are replying to all your potential guests and not just to the guest that left the review, right? This is a really important reminder. So Asia and Oceania, they both have really good numbers. I love seeing everything going down since 2023. But Bruno, what is the highlight for Asia on the average response time?
Well, Asia is performing in line with the global average. The performance is improving year on year. We have been seeing this trend for quite a while now. The 3-star are performing better than the 4-star and the 5-star, but the caveat here is that they are able to reply to fewer reviews than the 5-star and the 4-star. As we said in the first webinar, this is a very key metric because replying fast is really important, but also the percentage of the reviews they are able to reply varies consistently among the different star ratings.
I think there's always the big debate, right, about volume versus
Yes.
time. But nowadays with AI, and of course this is a brand decision and your hotel decision, but if you're using tools of AI, such as our AI review responses or an external one as well, it can really facilitate continuing to reply with on-brand replies in a quicker, timelier manner, and being able to reach that higher volume. So we are seeing more and more clients shift to the use of AI, not to replace the teams, but to give the teams the time to focus on more important things than responding to every single review, which is being able to analyze the semantics and being able to dig deeper into what are the guests actually saying? How can I act on the feedback, and not having to spend that time answering manually one by one the reviews, right? So it obviously depends per property, per brand, but we are seeing the shift is moving more towards the use of AI because you can stay up to brand standards, still give very timely replies, a quick check done by the team so that no reply is sent without a human touch, of course, but then being able to have the team focus on more valuable parts of the guest feedback. So then how does this compare with the Oceania region?
As you can see here, the performance is different in terms of improvement. The Oceania market is able to notch up year after year. The pace is the improvement is lower, It takes more time, still 6 days for the 5 stars. And surprisingly, here in this case, the 5-star also reply to fewer reviews than the 4-star and the 3 stars. This is something, some sort of a unicum that we can see among the regions. And this is why here probably is one of the areas of major improvements that the 5-star could achieve for the Oceania market. So to be able to reply faster to more reviews, because all in all, they are underperforming compared to the other regions.
But the 3 stars, like you said, really answering in the least amount of time. Brad, I was looking at your numbers. We'll go back to that later. I know that you reply in much less time than this. So maybe you have any insight from your teams later when we bring you back on, how they reply quicker. But for anyone in this region, if you do want to speak about management response, how we can support you setting up a strategy, how AI can support you, or simply, giving direction on where to focus on, maybe perhaps you first take all the negative ones and respond to those within 72 hours, and then, the neutral and the positive. So, our customer success team has all these strategies that they recommend our clients based on your needs, and we can look at that for 2026 so that we can continue to see these numbers drop in all regions. So wrapping up soon, for semantic analysis, which is personally, I think, a very key part of Reviewpro, what are we seeing here when it comes to the categories?
In this case, we are seeing one of the most important data point that we are sharing in the report, because as you can see, we have certain negative impact derived from the negative comments around the room, almost minus 2 points, but this changes massively across the regions. One of the reasons why Asia is the best performing market is because in Asia, the negative impact of rooms is very small, 0.9, 1 point, compared to all the other regions. In Oceania is much bigger, and being able to achieve such a good performance for the room, which is a key aspect of the entire guest journey, makes a huge difference that we can see year after year in the GRI. So we wanted to point out how relevant it is to be able to see these different metrics and combine them and understand which kind of effect they can create over the long time, over the long goal, for the GRI, to favor the GRI growth. This is the major takeaway that we want to share, to be able to look at these and understand if your hotel compares well or not. So you can benchmark yourself against this metric, or you're underperforming against this metric. This is a key aspect in order to be able to prioritize what you need to do to improve faster. And the proof of concept is that when you look at the Asia market is performing so well because they have a low negative impact derived from room.
I think that's a great point. And for everyone here, make sure you're going into your semantics section of Reviewpro if you are our client. If you're not, then also make sure there's a way that you can understand where are your negative comments coming from, what is bringing your online reputation down. Because as Bruno was saying, we recommend all of you comparing what are your top negative categories that are bringing down your online reputation. Because if all of these were to be improved, if you really put a plan in place to understand what are they saying about our room, what are they saying about our cleanliness and establishment, through our semantic platform, being able to understand, is it the carpets, is it the view, is it the smell, is it the AC? You can really dig deep to understand where is this feedback coming from, and you can turn these into positive categories. Then you can really go from an 85 to a 90% global review index, right? So this is where semantics really plays its part, is to be able to help you push that global review index by addressing the certain categories and areas that your properties and your brand need. Thank you, Bruno, for that. So let's wrap up. We have about 2 minutes if we can go through surveys.
Very quickly.
Very quickly, and then do we need to go through global, or do you want to jump to Asia, Oceania?
We can jump into Asia and Oceania. So the major takeaways here is to be able to show you how the performance of the NPS is in line at general level with the GRI. So they usually go hand in hand. You can see that although the 3-star is sometimes more affected by the effect of different seasonalities, and the 5-star is more stable, as we said, the Asia Pacific is kind of performing in this way, and it is achieving such a good result for this reason. We can see that there is a small negative trend that is ongoing in the 5-star for the Asia Pacific market, so it kind of is slowing down. We also see this because the GRI is growing less than in the past. So this is confirming that. A completely different thing is happening in the Oceania market. The Oceania market, as we said, is more affected by different seasonalities, probably also, how can I say, different operatives, kind of operations that we can see here, because we have huge apps and some very small or big trends that are ongoing. And this is especially true for the 5-star and the 5-star, while the 4-star is more stable. And this is why it is the only NPS value that is growing year on year. So this huge variation are sometimes difficult to control, but it is important to be able to benchmark yourself against this NPS trend in order to understand how much you are able to convert a first-timer into a loyal guest, or being able to promote your hotel through your guests. So achieving consistencies in that, it means that you are beating the market in the Oceania market.
So just a reminder to everyone, thank you so much, Bruno. NPS, of course, the Net Promoter Score, which is part of your surveys. So if you work with post-stay surveys to your guests and you're asking them how likely are you to recommend this property to a friend, to a colleague, that's where these numbers are coming from. And Brad, I'm going to come to you later because I saw that you're in the 70s of your NPS. So that is fantastic, way, way above your region and above many regions. So I'd love to know more about that in a moment. Do we need to go through? Should we finish up with survey behavior quickly? We have about 1 minute.
Very quickly. I think it is important to show this because we can see that there is a slightly higher drop-off rate for in the Asia market, a little higher than average, though the completion time is in line with the global trend. That is important because this is also impacting the kind of conversion rate at the end of the survey. What is most surprising is that we see a slightly different trend in the Oceania market. So for the Oceania market, we only have a statistical sample for the post-stay, and the Oceania market is performing a little better because the drop-off rate is a little slower. Why is that? Because the completion time is also smaller. So a shorter survey helps achieve less kind of drop-off rate. It helps achieve more conversion rate and a kind of more feedback that you can get from every survey that you are inviting your guests to complete. So that is key in order to achieve higher conversion rate.
Well, thank you so much. I want to talk 1 second about survey behavior. In the meantime, if we can bring Brad and Peter already back on stage, then I'll stop sharing in a moment as they come. Perfect. Just to wrap this up quickly, survey behavior was highly, highly requested from our clients to not only be part of Reviewpro, but be part on the report. So as you might know, if you don't use this page, please go leverage it. Go take advantage of this great new data, because it's telling you what is your guest behavior when they're taking your survey. So we used to always give you how many people open it and how many people are completing it, right? And now we're telling you exactly where are they dropping off along the way, so that you can make the necessary changes to your survey and be able to say, you know what, question 3, I'm making it mandatory. It's a big text box that we're asking for, and everyone's dropping. I would rather sacrifice, let's say, this question to be able to have higher conversion rate and higher drop. So please, my takeaway for you is, if you have surveys through Reviewpro, go look at the survey behavior page, look at your data for 2025, and we're still at the beginning of a new year where you can make changes to that survey based on the data on that page. So if you want, we'll also drop my LinkedIn in the chat if you want to contact me directly on how we can help you with that. And then I can put you in touch with our customer success and so on. So let me stop sharing. Brad and Peter, thank you so much for joining us back. Any key takeaways from the webinar? Anything that stood out or?
Yeah, I think from my side, it's great to see the NPS is really critical for us, and I'll touch on it later as well. But it's great to see the trends that happen across the different regions and how, I guess, Bruno, in your data, how it showed that the 3-star properties are really lifting their game as well, which is great for the entire industry, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
It also then pushes everyone else up at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Because the gap between 3-star and 4-star is becoming smaller and smaller year after year. So it is putting pressure on the 4-star to be able to achieve the same level of improvement, because the 3-star are really growing very, very fast. They have been suffering more from because of the COVID period, but now they are recovering very, very well.
What do you think, Peter? Any key takeaways from your side?
Yeah, echoing Brad's comments there. It's good to see everyone heading in the right direction. I think from an Oceania perspective, there's still a lot of room collectively for improvement, particularly on those response rates. I thought there's opportunities for us to be looking at that in terms of value proposition globally and how the Oceania positions itself in terms of its guest experience. So positive signs and where we're heading, but still some work to be done as well.
Absolutely. So just quickly, because we saw that in your regions, Brad and Peter, there was a big, let's say, effect after the summer season, which for you is around now, right? Coming out of high season, or you're still in the middle of it. What does that look like for guest feedback for you? Or any actions either of you take when it comes to right after peak season and how you can prepare for the next one?
Yeah, on our side, it's really about what we do beforehand. 100% for us, we know that the summer season and probably similar for Peter, it's all the school holiday periods for us that the guest has a much higher touch point with us. We need to be prepared. So from our perspective, it's actually about what we do in the couple months leading up to those holiday periods to prepare the teams and the properties, and reiterating some of the things that they should be doing and preparing for to make sure that those guests are taken care of. The value proposition for the leisure guests is a lot higher, right? It's their own money that they're spending. It's not the corporate money. So we need to make sure that they're getting just as much value for their stay. So for us, it's about what we've learned in the last couple of years, applying those practices and really delving into those beforehand. The summer season for us, which we're just coming out of, is a lot more challenging because it's a prolonged period. It's not just a 2-week school holiday period that we can sustain.
Yeah.
So it's really about learning and adapting even more so over those periods.
Peter, is that pretty similar for you at Caravan?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one addition factor that we sort of look at too is this northern-southern divide. So northern Australia that turns on in the wet season or in a dry season, which is opposite to southern Australia. So it's really interesting that we're working with one part of Australia that's just coming out of their busy season, dealing with where they sort of position themselves in the market, where are the improvements, whilst the other part of northern Australia is turning on with a very different market, particularly more nomad type travel. Big lappers are over 55s and spending a lot longer on the road. So different needs, different market. And to Brad's point, it's about trying to form that competitive value and where's that value proposition that meets your various segments. And the data that you showed, Bruno, around the different departments. And I think that collectively is that competitive set that we look at. And I think, Jessica, you said it really well, is that, it's not about the individual elements, but collectively, how are we doing this in industry? And that's how we sort of look at that data and go, well, where's the opportunity to remain competitive, or where are we lagging as well?
And I think something great that both of you pointed out is the segmentation, right? Really understanding not every person that walks in through those doors has the same needs, has the same expectations, is spending the same amount, whether from their pocket or not. And Brad, I know you use our surveys. You being able to segment those results, and I'm sure you do, but really being able to tailor those surveys. Not every guest has to see the same questions, right? So you just need to build one survey, but depending on who just checked out of your hotel, they might receive a whole different survey experience based on who they are and all the information you have in your PMS. Do you leverage that?
Yeah, to a certain extent. We also struggle with the idea of we want to get as much data as we can from the guests, as much response, but then we have to watch that drop off as well.
Yeah.
And we struggle with that a little bit. And at the moment, we're on the side of let's get as much response as we can till we build that up to a point where we're comfortable. But there's definite opportunity that we could be doing a little bit better on that side as well.
Brad,
it's a difficult trade-off.
But it's perfect because I literally know that you're not the only one, because there's one question in the chat from Miro Marcial. Thank you so much. And it's literally asking, what's a more important metric, getting in-depth, lengthy survey or a short survey with higher conversion rate? And I think you addressed that perfect, Brad, which is you're debating that right now. And right now you're choosing a lengthier survey. Is that correct? Or more responsive?
That's correct. That's correct. We're choosing a lengthier survey. And to be honest, this is also where I rely on the Shiji support team. So many times, whether it was James or Chelsea or now Doreen in the Singapore office who support us, and I've asked many occasions, what's better? What are the results? What are you seeing? So they influence then my decisions. At the moment we've stayed where we are with the lengthier survey because I want those data points. I need those data points at this stage before we look to reduce the length.
Yeah. To reply to Miro, we can also add that you should understand how many different guest types you have. Because if you have more than 2 or 3, you want to have higher conversion rate in order to capture also their feedback. Otherwise, you will only be relying upon the leisure guests that usually comprise the vast majority of them. If you really want to understand the different guest experiences they are offering, you need to increase conversion rate, giving up a bit of the question that you may have and relying more on the reviews. Remember that you have to consider the survey as a way of complementing the information that you cannot get from the reviews in order to have the right mix. But that also is affected by the guest types that you have in-house.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And the last thing I want to say to Mito, something I've been telling customers as well. I come from the customer success team originally. This is what Brad was mentioning he works closely with. Something I always told my clients is include as many questions as you are going to take action from when you read the data, right? So go back to your surveys. It's not the same for every one of our clients, but go through it. Let's do this exercise together. And when you have 100 responses of this one question, what actions are you going to take from that? Right? Is that a question that's going to lead you to data-driven decisions or not? And it was fascinating. I had a big debate once with a client about the question, how did you like our location? Because my first thought is, what are you going to do about it if the guests don't like it? You're not going to pick up the hotel and move it. But together we did something different. No one liked the location or a big group of guests, and they weren't marketing the location right. So they took this data. They then eventually removed it, but not before making a big change, which was, hey, we know we're not right downtown, but we are next to the biggest mall in the region, 10 minutes from the airport. And they started twisting it around as to who this location would benefit to. The families wanting to go to that mall or that big amusement park loved the location. It's maybe not a romantic getaway where you want to have dinner in the, downtown area. So then eventually they removed it, but it was this back and forth. So my answer to that is also, it really depends what are you going to do with the data, right? So we do have a new functionality. If you do have our surveys and you're online, it's called skip to question. A lot of our clients are using it. It just means you are letting your guests also choose, do they want to take a longer or shorter version of your survey? A lot of our clients are moving towards this. My recommendation, if you do that, there's been some great results. It's make sure before that you let them skip to the end, you're asking your core questions. You know that these 5 questions are covered no matter what. Those are the ones bringing you good insights, good data. The rest are maybe nice to haves. That's when you can make that decision. Obviously, this is based on brand, but I just wanted to share that. Peter, I just wanted to ask you about the report again. Thank you for that question, Mito. I hope that answered it. Let us know in the chat if that answer was valuable and if you have anything else. If anyone else wants to drop 1 or 2 more questions, we have about 1 or 2 minutes. Peter, is the report that Bruno releases that you also use for the other report used by a specific team? Or is it shared broadly across the business, as in you want everyone to be aware of this? Or you know what, it's this guest relations team that really focuses on this and everyone else does other things?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And what we try and do is have the broadest impact with the data. So for us, it's about bringing everybody up collectively as an industry and saying, well, we're only as good as the weakest performing business out there from a value proposition. And if we're going to compete with the likes of 4-star and accommodation or cruising or whatever that might be, we need to make sure that everyone's on the same playing field, or at least aiming towards the same goal. So for us, it's about sharing this information with our state members, who then use that data to develop training programs and education, going out to the parks themselves and saying, hey, this is one of the key areas that as an industry, we're not quite hitting, and looking at how we can improve that. We have this really great metric in the data we use where we break down the 1,000 parks into 2 subsets. One's those caravan parks that are accredited and go through this great program where they do best business practice and so forth, versus those that aren't. And we're able to see that those parks that are accredited actually have a higher GRI score. So we know that all that great stuff we're doing is filtering through to, guest experience and so forth. So it's really about making sure, back to that point before, about taking actionable insights from that data. It's nice to have. My CEO always goes, it's really nice to have, but what are you doing with it? Where's the industry value? So this is where we take it and apply it from that perspective.
That's amazing to hear. Bruno, I bet you didn't think 16 editions ago how far this report would go.
No, I would have.
Training plans and really touching a big industry.
No. But it's great. I mean, as a former client, this is always what I wanted to do, to be able to have a bit of guidance, and understand which trends that I wasn't able to see were impacting my performance. And so that was the idea that we used to build the report, to provide guidance, to give an idea of which trends are shaping the market. That was the goal.
I think we need to, oh my God, I could stay all day, but I think we need to wrap it up soon. Brad, one more question for you. If you would have to give one piece of advice to anyone downloading the report for the first time, especially the yearly one, 107 pages, I'm sure you jumped to your region, or, what actions have you taken from it? What do you focus on? What could someone walk away with today?
Yeah, I think the critical thing is to make sure you overlay the purpose and vision of your brand or your property on top of the results. Because there's no point aiming to be a Ritz-Carlton, as an example, if you're a 3-star property. You need to know what you're capable of offering and then do it to the best of your ability. I think as well, the critical thing to look at is the fact that guest experience is not just flicking an email to the team saying we need to do better. Right? It's a long-term strategy, and it needs to be talked about from the top down. Within Quest, we live and breathe it. Everyone in the corporate office is responsible for delivering on guest experience, and everyone in every property is responsible for delivering it. So everything that we do and we implement, we look at it from a long lens, and we make sure that it's sustainable and it can be delivered from every single day moving forward. It's not just let's quickly do a rush, get the GRI up, and then a month later it drops back to where it was. So really think about it from your brand's capability or your individual property's capability, and just do those items to the best of your ability. The report should underlay everything that you're doing, because it gives you a benchmark to work off. And that's really critical to know if you're achieving or if you're behind in the region. NPS is a prime example. Oceania looks like it's a bit of a heart attack, right? It's up and down. And consistency is the one thing that we preach in Quest. We really need to deliver consistent results, because that's what will make the guests come back to the brand time and time again.
Yeah, that is the main goal, sir.
That's amazing, Brad, especially what you said. I coming from 8 years in hotels, making sure you said corporate, it's their key goal, but also on properties. Sometimes there's that disconnect. That's important for everyone here. If you are in the corporate offices, always making sure that, the heartbeat of the operations, the ones in front of the guests, also know the vision. also know the key metrics, also know what are we aiming towards, because there's only so much we can do from corporate offices, right? We can build really nice surveys and make sure they match the brands, and we can really look at those reports and KPIs. And then how is that getting back on property to those that are actually turning those guest experiences around? So that's a great point, Brad. And I think we're going to wrap it up with you saying what I started with, which is use the benchmark report to compare with your data. To everyone here, that's, I think, the biggest takeaway. Peter, Brad, Bruno, I think we all agree. Look at it as a benchmark, literally the benchmark report. 2025 data is out. The report is in the chat. And please make sure you reach out to us if anyone has any questions. Thank you so much again, Brad and Peter. Enjoy the rest of this busy season. And continue to reach out to us, please, with anything, if we can continue to support you from our side within Reviewpro.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Bruno, as well for the report, of course. If not, there'd be no webinar.
My pleasure.
And to anyone that attended, you will get the recording. Please share it with whoever you find relevant. And please reach out to me if you'd like on LinkedIn. And we can continue the conversation there. So thank you all. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.